The main character, Rodion Raskolnikov, is living in extreme poverty. He hasn't eaten for nearly 2 days and owes his landlady a large sum in rent. He heads to the apartment of Alyona Ivanovna, an old pawnbroker, while contemplating a disturbing plan that has long haunted him: murder. He pawns a silver watch, all the while carefully observing the layout of the apartment. As he leaves, he tells her he will return soon with another item: a silver cigarette case. Raskolnikov stops by a tavern and meets a drunken former government clerk, Marmeladov. Learning that Raskolnikov is a student, Marmeladov starts talking about poverty, claiming poverty is not a vice, but beggary is. He tells Rodion about his family, his educated but desperate wife, Katerina Ivanovna, and his daughter Sonia, who had to resort to prostitution to support the family because Marmeladov spends all their money on alcohol. Raskolnikov escorts Marmeladov home, shocked by the miserable state of their lodgings. After Katerina berates her husband, Raskolnikov quietly leaves some change on the windowsill and departs, not fully understanding why he did so. Raskolnikov lives in a tiny, cramped room described as a closet about 6 paces long. The furnishings are minimal and in poor condition. He receives a letter from his mother, Pulcheria Alexandrovna, revealing that his sister Dunya was slandered while working as a governess for the Svidrigailovs. The master of the house made advances toward her, leading to conflict with his wife, Marfa Petrovna, who mistreated Dunya. Now a 45-year-old man named Pyotr Petrovich Luzhin, a minor government official, has proposed to Dunya. Raskolnikov's mother writes that she and Dunya are coming to St. Petersburg for the wedding, which Luzhin insists should happen quickly. The letter disturbs Raskolnikov deeply. He realizes that his family is considering this marriage to escape poverty, but he is opposed to it. Despite his disapproval, he knows he has no right to forbid the marriage. His thoughts again return to the idea that has been torturing him: killing the old pawnbroker. While walking around the city, Raskolnikov eats a meat pie and drinks vodka, which quickly intoxicates him. He falls asleep and dreams a horrifying scene from childhood: a group of men brutally beating a horse to death. Rodion is powerless to stop it and weeps as he kisses the dead horse. Awakening from the nightmare, he again ponders the murder. As he walks through the market, he overhears Lizaveta, old pawnbroker's sister, saying that she will be home alone tomorrow at 7 p.m. Raskolnikov realizes that everything is now decided. Raskolnikov overhears a conversation between a student and an officer about how the old pawnbroker is worthless and that killing her could benefit many poor people with her money. This idea deeply resonates with him. Back at home, in a delirious state, he prepares for the murder. He hides an axe under his coat and creates a fake pledge wrapped like a cigarette case to distract an old pawnbroker. After stealing an axe from the caretaker's room, he sets out for her apartment. At the old pawnbroker's place, Raskolnikov worries she'll detect his nervousness, but she accepts the pledge and turns away to unwrap it. Seizing the moment, he strikes her with the blunt side of the axe, killing her with a second blow. He takes her keys and begins looting her chest of valuables. Suddenly, her sister, Lizaveta, walks in and sees the scene. In a panic, he kills her too. Overwhelmed by horror, he nonetheless manages to clean the blood off himself, the axe, and his boots. He's about to leave when he hears people arriving. After hiding and waiting for them to leave, he slips out and returns home. He puts the axe back and collapses fully clothed on his bed, unconscious. Raskolnikov sleeps until 3 p.m. and awakens in horror, remembering the murder. He frantically checks his clothes for bloodstains and finds the stolen jewelry from the old pawnbroker, which he had completely forgotten about. He hides it in a hole behind the wallpaper in the corner of his room. Soon after, Nastasia, the servant, brings him a summons from the police station. Nervous and panicked, Raskolnikov goes there, fearing he has been discovered. However, it turns out the summons is only about his unpaid rent. He simply needs to sign a note promising repayment. As he prepares to leave, he overhears police discussing the murder of Alyona Ivanovna and faints. Fearing a search by the police, Raskolnikov takes the stolen purse and jewelry and hides them under a stone in a deserted courtyard. Raskolnikov remains in a semi-conscious state for several days. When he comes to, he finds Razumikin and Nastasia at his side. He receives a money transfer from his mother, intended for rent and necessities. Razumikin tells him that while he was ill, Detective Zametov came by several times, asking questions about his belongings. Another visitor arrives, the medical student Zosimov. The group begins discussing the murder case of Alyona and Lizaveta Ivanovna. Zosimov explains that many are under suspicion, including a painter named Mikolka, but there is no solid evidence yet. Pyotr Petrovich Luzhin, Dunya's fiancé, comes to visit. Raskolnikov bluntly accuses Luzhin of wanting to marry Dunya, just so she will feel eternally grateful to him for rescuing her family from poverty. Luzhin denies the accusation, but Raskolnikov, angry and disgusted, throws him out. His friends leave as well. Razumikin is deeply worried, sensing that something is seriously weighing on Raskolnikov's mind. Raskolnikov wanders into a tavern called the Crystal Palace, where he meets Detective Zametov. During their conversation, Raskolnikov provocatively describes how he would act if he were the murderer and even implies he committed the crime. Zametov dismisses it as madness and doesn't believe him. Raskolnikov then roams the city in a haze, seriously considering suicide by drowning, but changes his mind. Instead, in a delirious state, he returns to the pawnbroker's building, now under renovation, and starts a bizarre conversation with the workers about the murder. They think he's mentally unstable. On the way to see Razumikin, Raskolnikov witnesses a crowd gathered around Marmeladov, who has been hit by a carriage while drunk. The injured man is carried home in critical condition. On his deathbed, Marmeladov begs Sonia for forgiveness and dies in her arms. Deeply moved, Raskolnikov gives all the money he has to help pay for the funeral. Feeling slightly better, he visits Razumikin, who walks him home. As they approach Raskolnikov's apartment, they notice the light on. When they go inside, they discover that his mother and sister have arrived in St. Petersburg. At the sight of them, Raskolnikov collapses in a faint. After regaining consciousness, Raskolnikov asks his mother and sister not to worry about him. He speaks with his sister Dunya, urging her to break off the engagement with Luzhin, whom he sees as self-serving and manipulative. Pulcheria Alexandrovna wants to stay and look after her son, but Razumikin convinces both women to return to their hotel. Razumikin is struck by Dunya's beauty and is deeply drawn to her. Her appearance blends strength and confidence with grace and softness. The next morning, Razumikin visits Raskolnikov's mother and sister. They discuss Luzhin, and Pulcheria reveals that they received a letter from him that morning. In the letter, Luzhin requests a meeting but asks that Raskolnikov not be present. Raskolnikov is feeling somewhat better. He tells his family about how he gave away all his money the previous day to pay for a poor man's funeral. He senses that his family fears him. When the topic of Luzhin comes up, Raskolnikov criticizes him for being cold and inattentive to his fiancée. After hearing about Luzhin's letter, Raskolnikov says he will do whatever his family thinks is right. Dunya insists that Raskolnikov must be present when Luzhin visits. Sonia arrives to invite Raskolnikov to Marmeladov's funeral. Although Sonia's social status prevents her from interacting as an equal with his mother and sister, Raskolnikov introduces her to them anyway. As Sonia leaves, Dunya bows to her, a gesture that embarrasses Sonia deeply. While walking home, Sonia is followed by a stranger, her neighbor, who is later revealed to be Svidrigailov. Raskolnikov and Razumikin visit Porfiry Petrovich, the investigating officer, because Raskolnikov wants to know how to reclaim the items he had pawned with Alyona Ivanovna. Porfiry tells him to file a claim with the police and assures him that his items were found among those seized by investigators. As they discuss the murder, Raskolnikov realizes that Porfiry suspects him. Porfiry brings up an article that Raskolnikov once wrote. In it, Rodion argued that people are divided into two categories: ordinary people, who must obey the law and live submissively; extraordinary people, who have the right to break laws and commit crimes if it helps them achieve great things or bring progress to society. Porfiry pointedly asks Raskolnikov whether he considers himself one of those extraordinary people who has the right to kill or rob. Raskolnikov responds, "It's quite possible." Porfiry then asks if Raskolnikov saw the painters during his last visit to the pawnbroker. Rodion hesitates, then says he did not see them. Razumikin steps in and explains that Raskolnikov had visited the old woman 3 days before the murder, and that the painters were only there on the day of the crime. The two friends leave officer's office. Outside Raskolnikov's building, a mysterious man approaches and calls him a murderer, then walks away without explanation. Back at home, Raskolnikov is struck with fever again. He dreams that the stranger is leading him to the pawnbroker's apartment. In the dream, Rodion strikes Alyona Ivanovna with an axe, but she laughs at him. He tries to flee, but finds himself surrounded by a crowd of accusing people. He awakens, disturbed. Then, Svidrigailov arrives at Raskolnikov's door. Raskolnikov is unhappy to see Svidrigailov, since the man's behavior in the past severely damaged Dunya's reputation. Arkady Ivanovich Svidrigailov claims that he and Raskolnikov are alike, two of a kind. He tries to persuade Raskolnikov to arrange a meeting with Dunya. He explains that his late wife left Dunya 3,000 rubles, and he personally wants to give her 10,000 rubles as compensation for all the trouble he caused. Raskolnikov refuses to arrange the meeting. Later that evening, Raskolnikov and Razumikin visit his mother and sister. Luzhin is outraged that his request for Raskolnikov not to be present was ignored. He refuses to discuss wedding plans in Rodion's presence. He reminds Dunya of her family's desperate financial situation and scolds her for not appreciating the opportunity she has. Dunya says she cannot choose between her brother and her fiancé. The argument escalates, and Dunya asks Luzhin to leave, effectively ending their engagement. Raskolnikov visits Sonia in her room, which is described as small, misshapen and gloomy, almost like a shed. He asks her what she plans to do now, especially since Katerina Ivanovna and her children are now fully dependent on her. Sonia responds that she cannot abandon them. Without her, they would starve. Moved by her suffering, Raskolnikov bows to her feet. Sonia is stunned and thinks he must be mad, but he explains, "I didn't bow to you, but to all human suffering." Rodion notices a New Testament on her table and asks her to read him the story of the raising of Lazarus. In this quiet, impoverished room, the murderer and the prostitute sit together, reading the eternal words of Scripture, a scene of strange yet profound unity. Before leaving, Raskolnikov promises to return the next day to tell Sonia, who is a murderer. Unbeknownst to them, Svidrigailov is in the neighboring room and hears their entire conversation. The next day, Raskolnikov goes to Porfiry Petrovich to request the return of his pawned items. Porfiry again tries to provoke and test Raskolnikov. Finally losing patience, Rodion anxiously demands that Porfiry declare him guilty or innocent of the pawnbroker's murder. Porfiry dodges the question and cryptically says that there is a surprise in the next room, though he refuses to elaborate. Suddenly, the painter Mikolka is brought in and publicly confesses to the murder of Alyona Ivanovna. Shaken, Raskolnikov returns home, where he meets the mysterious man who had once called him a murderer outside his apartment. The man apologizes. It turns out he was the surprise Porfiry had mentioned, meant to pressure Raskolnikov into a reaction. Now remorseful, he admits he was mistaken. Raskolnikov feels a sense of relief and calm for the first time in days. Luzhin blames Raskolnikov entirely for his falling out with Dunya. He regrets not giving money to the Raskolnikov family before the wedding. It might have secured their loyalty. Now seeking revenge, Luzhin asks his roommate, Lebezatnikov, who knows Sonia, to invite her over. Luzhin pretends to apologize for not attending Marmeladov's funeral, though he had been invited, and gives Sonia 10 rubles. Lebezatnikov suspects Luzhin is plotting something, though he doesn't yet understand what. Katerina Ivanovna hosts a memorial dinner for her late husband, but few invited guests show up. Raskolnikov is among those who do attend. A conflict erupts between Katerina and the landlady, Amalia Ivanovna, whom she accuses of inviting the wrong crowd, not the respectable people who actually knew the deceased. In the middle of this argument, Luzhin arrives. Luzhin suddenly accuses Sonia of stealing a 100-ruble note from him. He claims Lebezatnikov is a witness. Sonia is initially shocked, but quickly denies the accusation and returns the 10 rubles Luzhin had given her earlier. Katerina Ivanovna, refusing to believe Sonia is guilty, turns her daughter's pockets inside out, and the 100-ruble note falls out. Lebezatnikov then realizes what Luzhin has done and publicly exposes him, saying he saw Luzhin plant the money on Sonia. Raskolnikov defends Sonia, and Luzhin, furious and humiliated, threatens to call the police. Amalia Ivanovna evicts Katerina and the children from the apartment. Raskolnikov goes to Sonia, tormented by indecision over whether to tell her the truth about Lizaveta's murder. He finally confesses that he knows who killed her, and that he himself did it, though he insists Lizaveta's death was accidental. Sonia understands immediately and, full of compassion, tells him that no one in the world is more miserable than he is now. She vows to follow him even to penal servitude. When Sonia asks why he committed the murder, especially since he didn't even take the stolen goods, Raskolnikov says, "I wanted to dare and I killed. I just wanted to dare, Sonia, that's the whole reason." He explains he wanted to test whether he could break free from moral limits, whether he was a trembling creature or had the right. Sonia tells him he must confess. If he does, God will forgive him and give him a new life. Lebezatnikov arrives in distress, saying Katerina Ivanovna has gone mad. She's forcing the children to beg in the streets, marching around beating a pan and making them sing and dance. She is eventually brought back to Sonia's room, where she collapses and dies. At that moment, Svidrigailov appears. He tells Raskolnikov he will pay for Katerina's funeral, place the children in orphanages, and help Sonia. He also asks Raskolnikov to tell Dunya that he will spend the 10,000 rubles he once meant for her on helping Sonia and the children instead. When Raskolnikov asks why he is being so generous, Svidrigailov reveals that he overheard everything through the wall during Raskolnikov's conversation with Sonia. Katerina Ivanovna's funeral takes place. Razumikin tells Raskolnikov that Pulcheria Alexandrovna, his mother, has fallen ill. Later, Porfiry Petrovich visits Raskolnikov. The investigator openly states that he suspects Raskolnikov of the murders, though he has no solid proof. He urges Rodion to confess voluntarily, giving him 2 days to think about it. Despite the direct conversation, Raskolnikov still does not admit to the crime. Raskolnikov feels he must talk to Svidrigailov, who seems to have some mysterious hold over him. He finds Svidrigailov at a tavern. The man speaks of his late wife and admits he had been deeply in love with Dunya, although he now claims to be engaged to someone else. After leaving the tavern, Svidrigailov secretly meets with Dunya. He insists she come to his apartment, where he tells her he overheard Sonia's conversation with Raskolnikov. He promises to help Rodion if Dunya will return his affection. When she tries to leave, she discovers the door is locked. Dunya pulls out a hidden revolver and fires several shots at Svidrigailov, but misses. She demands to be let go. Moved by her courage, Svidrigailov gives her the key, and she leaves, dropping the gun as she goes. That evening, Svidrigailov drifts from tavern to tavern. Returning home, he visits Sonia. He tells her he may be leaving for America, and she thanks him for organizing the funeral and helping the orphaned children. He gives her 3,000 rubles so she can start a better life. Sonia is reluctant to accept, but Svidrigailov insists, saying he knows she will follow Raskolnikov to penal labor, and she will need the money. Later, Svidrigailov wanders to a seedy part of the city and checks into a cheap hotel. That night, he dreams of a young girl who drowned herself after he ruined her life. At dawn, he walks into the street and shoots himself with Dunya's revolver. Raskolnikov says goodbye to his mother and sister. He tells them he plans to confess to the murders and promises to start a new life. He reflects with regret that he was unable to overcome the moral threshold set by his own theory and his conscience. Raskolnikov visits Sonia. She puts a cypress cross around his neck and tells him to go to a street corner, kneel, kiss the ground, and declare aloud, "I am a murderer." Raskolnikov follows her advice and then goes to the police station where he confesses to the murders of the pawnbroker and her sister. While there, he also learns of Svidrigailov's suicide. Raskolnikov is sentenced to 8 years of penal servitude, hard labor, in Siberia. His mother, Pulcheria Alexandrovna, became ill at the very start of the trial. Her illness was largely psychological, resembling madness, and Dunya and Razumikin took her away from St. Petersburg. She invents a fantasy that Rodion has simply gone away, and clings to that belief. Sonia follows the convoy of prisoners and relocates to Siberia, where Raskolnikov is imprisoned. Dunya and Razumikin get married and plan to move to Siberia themselves in 5 years. Eventually, Pulcheria Alexandrovna dies from grief and longing for her son. Sonia writes regular letters to Rodion's family, keeping them informed about his condition and life in prison. In the prison camp, Raskolnikov is isolated from the other inmates. They dislike and avoid him, sensing his lack of faith and emotional detachment. He reflects on his fate and feels ashamed that he wasted his life so stupidly. He even regards Svidrigailov, who managed to take his own life, as spiritually stronger than himself. Sonia, however, is loved by everyone in the prison colony. Whenever she visits, the convicts remove their hats in respect. She brings them money and gifts from their families. Raskolnikov falls ill and has a long, difficult recovery in the prison hospital. Sonia visits him faithfully. One day, Raskolnikov breaks down emotionally, throws himself at her feet, and clings to her knees, weeping. Sonia is startled at first, but then she realizes he loves her endlessly. Their love resurrected them. One heart held the inexhaustible wellspring of life for the other.